Nell and Jim, how are you guys doing?
Howdy! How are you?
I am good. It's a nice day. It's starting to cool down
All right.
finally, right? So
Yeah, where are you?
I'm in Napa, so it's a bit hotter, I think, than where you guys are. Where in the Bay are you?
We're in San Rafael. We're actually in the county, but do you happen to know like where China Camp is and that area of San Rafael?
Not sure offhand, no. But my co-host lives in.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah, it's just really pretty here. And shall we show them our view?
Oh yeah, show
Our
it.
view? Watch. Let's see.
Let's not do that.
Oh, I'm afraid we're gonna. We're too worried. We're gonna. Here we go. I'm gonna do it.
Hang on. Let me.
No.
Yeah.
Can you see?
Oh my God. See, okay. Well,
Sorry. There you go.
oh my gosh, that's ridiculous.
Wow.
Ridiculous.
There, great. All right.
Well,
We have no complaints except that the world is crazy and there are a lot of people suffering. I mean, that's the weird thing, to be in this beautiful place while all this horrendous stuff is going on.
yeah. Well, if you get to share your view, I'll share my view. Okay. So here.
Ah.
Oh, nice. Great.
Oh, beautiful. Wow.
Yeah.
That's yeah.
I'll match it, but being on the water, I mean, like that is, I mean, it's got to be pretty amazing. So,
Yeah. It helps on these super hot days, really.
yeah, for sure. And I know Jim just stepped away, but I saw the first episode of your show, and I know Jim mentioned a kayak concert of sorts. Is that like, are you thinking like right there on the water where you're at?
Well, here's Mr. Idea Man coming in right now. He'll tell you.
Yeah, I was thinking about it. We have a deck that faces the water and thinking about calling it the high tide concerts.
Ah!
And have people just, if people are in kayaks around the neighborhood, because you have that next door neighbor and those things, and a lot of people can launch their kayaks in some nearby launches and then just paddle over.
Yeah, that's a great plan and a great way to do it. I'd be so on board, I tell you. I mean, I have 5 kayaks in my garage right now. Not all mine, but I mean, a couple are my best friends. but yeah, I'm big on kayaking. I got my son out this weekend. We hit the Napa River.
Right on. Do you want us to tell you when we do it? You could bring your son.
Yeah. You better tell me when you do it.
Okay, right on.
Good, great. Yeah, we are having internet issues here, and there's a person out here working right now. And so just want to check and make sure that you're getting, because we're using just a cell phone right now. Cell phone.
Yeah, because they have the internet down or something while they're working on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's off right now. So
It's really been a mess. It's why yesterday on our show, we were dropped 3 times. It's like, oh no, it had worked pretty well because we keep upgrading, but the service doesn't upgrade, just the cost. And so Jim's just trying to problem solve that today.
Yeah, well, fingers crossed for you there.
Thank you.
Yeah, so let's start at the beginning, even before Nell and Jim were Nell and Jim. So, Jim, I know you had your first paid gig when you were like 15. Tell me about how you got into music and got your start.
Let me see. I started when I was. My first gig was when I was 15, and when I was a kid, my dad played guitar. He was a really good guitar player and singer. And he taught me how to play music. And so I just worked on it. When he would go to work, I'd be home practicing. He'd come home and I'd pretty much learned what he had taught me. And then, let's see. So then I started playing with older people who had, I guess they'd you know, I'd met him different ways. I'll tell you one story that's kind of funny. The guy that I first played my first gig with when I was 15, he got me the gig, and it was a house party. And the way I met him was there was a fella that I knew that my dad had given a blues guitar lesson to when I was 8. That's when I first got into it, and I heard him teaching this guy. Guy came over and said, "Mr. Nunnally, I heard you know how to play guitar. Do you know anything about blues guitar?" And my dad was born in Arkansas, and my grandfather was a sharecrop farmer. So my dad learned to play guitar from my grandfather. And back there, you know, there was a lot of music around the cotton fields and stuff like that. So he heard that music, and then anyway, I watched him teach this kid how blues music was played with a slide, like bottleneck style. He tuned the guitar to a chord, and then he got a butter knife out of the drawer, and then he went over and he started playing this kind of slide guitar.
Wow.
And so anyway, when the guy left, I was 8, and I asked my dad if he would show me some guitar. So he started teaching me guitar. And so I played it for a little while, and then I kind of got back into it when I was about 14, and I started really pestering my dad because he was showing my brother how to play, one of my brothers, and I had to get better than my brother.
Of course,
there's something.
Right? Yeah.
Sibling competition.
Yeah.
Who's
And
that first person?
Pat Dorn, a fellow named Pat Dorn. Yeah, who was a really fine guitar player. But Pat, years later, when I was 14 and he heard I was getting into the guitar, really into it, he called me up and he said, "Hey, Jim, I'm learning to play bluegrass music. Do you know anything about that?" And I said, "I don't." And he started coming over. He was learning to play dobro style, like Jerry Douglas and Mike Aldridge and Rob Ikes. Well, Rob came later, but you know, Brother Oswald, all these old styles of slide guitar, lap style, you know, in
Yeah.
like they had in Lester Flatt and Earl Scruggs, Josh Graves, that style. And so in any case, I started playing with him. He started teaching me, and we started jamming regularly. He started teaching me these tunes, and I started learning. He'd leave records at my house, and I got to listen to Mike Aldridge and Tut Taylor and all these great old style players. And so in any case, that was how I started getting into bluegrass. This is a long story. I'm sorry this is so long.
It's good.
But in any case, the funny thing was he said, you know, we need to find a banjo player, you know, and so I was about 14, I guess, about that time. I wrote down on a piece of paper, I wrote, dobro player, guitar player, looking for banjo player to jam with.
Uh-huh.
And wrote a little ad, and I took it over to the laundromat near my parents' house.
Yeah.
And I hung it in the laundromat, right?
That's where all the good band players are, by the way, you know.
Yeah. So what was funny about this is that, so I was out, I don't know, running around, and I come home actually I went to a concert. This same dobro player took me to a concert in San Francisco, and Pat Dorn, and he took me to a show that was a benefit for the Caffrey family. And so when I got home from that show and I was, like I said, 14, when I got home from that show, I came into the house and my mom said, "Hey, somebody called, said you put an ad at the laundromat looking for a banjo player." And so I said, "Oh yeah, I did." And she said, "Well, he called and he wants you to call him." So I called him and I said,
"Is that Bob?"
Bob Smith, a fellow named Bob Smith. And he said, "Oh, I saw your ad." And I said, oh, great. He said, where do you live? And I said, I live over here on Denesta Drive. And he said, well, I'm right down the street from you, you should come over. So he said, what are you working on? And I said, well, I just am starting to learn, but I heard a guy today whose name is, I couldn't remember his name. I heard him in a concert in, wow, that sounds great.
All right. Like, fire department right around the corner. So, you get the natural.
Oh, man.
Wow. I got to be on the porch, so it's just too nice to not,
Yeah.
It is.
So anyway, so he says, what are you working on? I said, well, I've been, learning some Chet Atkins stuff and Roy Clark. And I said, but today I went to a concert and I heard this guy, man, he's just like amazing. I couldn't believe how good he was. And I said, I can't remember his name. And he said, was it Tony Rice? And I said, that's him, that's the guy. And he said, yeah, I was supposed to be there, but I had to work. And so they got somebody else to fill in. I couldn't do it. And so he said, you want to come over? I said, yeah. So I went over to his house and he had a Tony Rice record there. And it said at autograph, he showed it to me. It said, to the J.D. Crowe of California. That was Bob Smith.
Wow.
And so anyway, Bob started to show me some stuff because he was playing with Tony Rice. Tony had just come to California to play with David Grisman. And so Tony was with David and they played at this benefit in San Francisco. In any case, I got to hear him there. And then, and so fast forward all these years and I played with David for 16 years after,
That's
pretty
great.
fun. That's kind of my story.
Those are good.
I'm sticking to it.
Yeah.
That worked. And so Nell, how about you? How did you get started? When did you get started in music?
Let's see. So well, what happened for me is that I grew up in a military family. My dad was career Air Force, and we went to the elementary schools and stuff like that on the Air Force bases, which tend to be really small. And I had seen that there was like a little band that was in the elementary school, but I didn't know how to, I didn't have anything to play, but I got kind of interested in that. And so I signed up for some lessons and I learned how to play the flute. That's in the 5th grade. And then I just played, I loved it. I was, same thing as Jim. I'd like hole away in my room for hours and hours and hours. I still remember it. Just in my room, it was sort of dark in there and I just played the same stuff over and over again. But I just so loved it. I had so much fun with it. And so I played in school bands and choirs and sang in the choir and stuff like that all through my childhood. And I learned how to read music. So I played mostly classical music and then some folk stuff, because I little songbooks and things like that. I play things in. One of my favorite memories is we lived in Alaska when I was in the 6th grade. And Alaska has a really awesome state fair.
Yeah.
And they have like the biggest, like the thing that I'll never forget is they have who can grow the biggest vegetable.
Yeah.
So people would put on the back of their pickup trucks, there would be one pumpkin, kind of a thing. I mean, like monstrous, because of course the summers there are so long and warm. So I went to the state fair and they had a little talent contest. I was such a nervy little kid, I entered myself in the talent contest and I played The Impossible Dream on my flute. I could just see like this little scrawny kid up there playing my heart out.
Sure.
Dream. And so I've loved music all my life, but I set it aside. It never occurred to me it could be my life. That was, in a way, it was encouraged when I was a kid, but it was like child's play. You set it aside to get a real job and support yourself and things like that. So I had a career in political organizing and fundraising and nonprofits for many decades. And then, in my late 40s, I had loved my work. I've been super lucky. I've always loved the work that I've done. It's been mostly cause related at that time. And my last real job was for Mother Jones Magazine as their chief philanthropy officer. I was their fundraiser. And so, but at late 40s, my one child, my daughter, Cass, was getting ready to leave the nest, and she was going really far away. She went to college in Scotland.
This
And
far.
I know, I mean, my heart was just raw, and we went through our, like, the really typical teenage years where she was really trying to break away from me, and I was trying to hang on probably too tight, and then she worked harder to get away from me and all that. But I realized that I really needed something else to lift my heart and lift my spirit, and kind of in a way, I guess, think about the next chapter of my life. I had loved my work. I love being a mom. I still love being a mom. But I needed something new. And so I got up my nerve, and I called somebody to see if I could take some singing lessons. And it turns out she's really wonderful. Her name is Carrie Sheldon, and she's based in Berkeley. And she was really wonderful because she just told me that really what it was about was just finding my own voice. And I thought I'd go in there and she'd show me how to sing like somebody, but she was so great. She said, you just, sound like yourself and sing like yourself. And that's been a guiding light for me. And I met a friend of mine invited me to a backyard jam in Berkeley. And it turns out that there's like all these really famous bluegrass musicians in Berkeley. And Lori Lewis was there, and Susie Thompson was there, and Tom Rosen was there, and others, and Eric Thompson was there, and I just literally hid behind a potted plant, literally just sat behind a potted plant trying to be not noticed while everybody sang and played and sang and played and had a good time together. And I tell you what, it just gave me a bug. And so I sent an email. I found Lori Lewis on the internet, and I found her email, and I wrote her an email that night, and I really very apologetically said, I don't know anything, and I don't know how to do anything, but do you think I could take a lesson with you? And she wrote me back the same night, said, yeah, come on over, I'll give you a lesson. So one thing led to another, and I really did get a warm welcome from the local bluegrass community. So in the same way as Jim, our music isn't bluegrass music, but it's really influenced by it. And the people around us here, sounds like going back to when Jim was a kid, really welcome newcomers for the most part. And so I started going to festivals and things like that, and eventually met Jim, and he co-produced my first album, and one thing led to another, and here we are.
Yeah, and so tell me a little bit about how that introverted girl turned into someone who's comfortable playing in front of other people, because that sounds like it took some work to get there, right?
You nailed it on the head, because I really I am an introvert, and there's a lot of great things about being an introvert. Because I think one of the strengths of being an introvert is you really are looking inside for your energy and your guidance. And so I think that in a way, being an introvert can give you courage, because you're not looking for external clues to say that you're okay. You're sort of looking inside and following your internal barometer. And so, it may have given me, I think that really gave me courage in a way, because I thought, well, this is something I really want to do. I'm a grown-up. It's scary, but in a way that kind of makes it more interesting that it's scary. I've got sort of like, God, why is this so scary to me? But what I've realized is that performing in a live situation, particularly engaging with people through music, it just opened up a side of me that I knew was there, but was kind of dormant. You know, I mean, I come from a family of storytellers. We're Southerners, like many years back, hundreds of years back, actually, in the South. And my family members are brilliant storytellers, and I was always a listener. I love to listen, but I never told the stories. And when I realized that I was gaining my own voice through music, through singing and through songwriting, that I was carrying on a family tradition also of being a storyteller. So I think but that also gives me courage, is that I believe in the stories. I inhabit the stories when I'm singing them. I feel very present with them, and I want to share that story with others. And so that gives me courage also.
Yeah, you're able to find your voice, and
Yeah.
so tell me how that progressed for you guys. They're your first album that Jim produced your album, but then coming together, your first album together was "Baby Let's Take the Long Way Home," right?
Actually, we have a duo album that preceded that. And do you want to tell them the story about how that came about, our duo?
Yeah, we had been working. I had done 2 records with Nell, and her first record, The Wango, and then On the Brooklyn Road. Those were her first 2 solo records. And then after working with her, and I sang with her on 1 or 2 of her tracks on 1 or 2 of the album, 1 or both of the albums. I don't quite remember which songs, but
Honky Tonk Girl, for one thing.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah,
When My Blue Moon.
Yeah, and they sounded the duet harmony, I thought, was just really great. And because, you know, Nell has a natural Southern accent, and even though I'm from California, I was born right over in Richmond, California. During the Dust Bowl, so many people from Oklahoma and Arkansas and that area and Alabama, they came to California looking for work, right? Because of the Dust Bowl. So even though I'm from here, people say, "Oh, you have a Southern accent," and that's because of my father. And so, you know, when you're growing up, you hear
the dialect.
Yeah, the kids learn the dialect. So in any case, I totally could hear the sound in Nell's voice. That was this Southern beautiful sound. So the singing and her singing is a natural sound, which I think is great. And so our singing together, our dialect together, really works well. And so that's part of what my ear was drawn to that. And so I asked her if she'd be interested in doing a duo, like playing gigs. And so we started working. She said yes, which was great. So we started working, doing some duo stuff, and we decided to do a record. And we did this record that's called House and Garden. And that was just guitar and 2 voices. And my vision for that was, like, there was a record called by the Everly Brothers called Songs Our Father Taught Us. And I really like that sound of they just had 2 guitars and they had their 2 voices. And so I thought that would be great if we did a record kind of like that. And we did it, and then we started getting reviews. And I remember the first couple reviews came in, and they were like, "Yeah, this is like the Carter Family. This is like this Everly Brothers stuff." That was like a duo thing. And they got it, which is great, because, you know, you hope that people understand that that's what you're trying to go for when you're trying to do certain things. And so we went ahead and we did that, and it worked great. We did that, and then we did the next record was, I think you did Rose of No Man's Land, which was a big production. There was a record called The Rose of No Man's Land, and they did a show, PBS special based on that record. and it's a great record. And so I was able, that was done in Southern California. It was produced by Joe Henry. I'm sorry, John Henry. Joe Henry is a record. John Henry is a still driving man. Joe Henry is a record producer, and they both have about the same amount of strength.
Yeah.
So, in any case, after that, we started a band. You want to tell me about that band? It's kind of an interesting story because the band came out of this project, which was Rose of No Man's Land, and I was able to get some of the musicians to be on that project on the live shows. So when we went out and toured it, I was able to work sort of as a band leader, and I got musicians that I knew, and we went out and we also got some of the musicians that were on the record, and we did on the tour. Ramla Jack Elliott was with us when we went out on the road, and so that was great because he was on the record. He sang on the record. He sang a song called "Drive On."
Johnny Cash, it's a great version. I love that version.
Yeah, it's a great song. And so we went ahead after that. What we started to do, we started to open the show with a set of country music.
Yeah.
Old time country music. And we used that band. And then we said, man, we should just have a country band. Kind of like,
Yeah.
So we went ahead and formed a band, and we started with a different drummer. The drummer that we got was a guy who's really interesting, John Arkin, and the bass player, Jim Kerwin, and then a pedal steel player named Pete Grant. And all these guys have this amazing history of music background. It's pretty incredible. And so we worked with them, and we recorded our first record, which was Baby Let's Take the Long Way Home. And then we did a next record, which was Steel. And on Steel, we replaced the pedal steel with the accordion who plays keyboard as well. And that was a transition into the sound we have now, and that's on our new record, Western Sun. I think that the sound is now really solidified into our own sound. And I think having the accordion and the flute is a really great combination that you hear in a lot of traditional Irish music, and you'll hear it also in Bulgarian music, and you hear it in Polish music. You hear the accordion and flute. A lot of times you hear those kind of combinations. A lot of times you'll hear the fiddle instead of the flute. That's in those traditional sounds. But the flute and the fiddle have similar timbre and register. So they work great with, I think, the flute, like in Irish music, Scottish, Irish, and English music, the flute is really interesting because it has that reed sound like the accordion has. Yeah. And it's a great sound to my ear. I really like it. So, and Nell has an amazing tone. She has a tone that's like, if you think she plays mini flute and piccolo, and if you listen to piccolo, a lot of times you think of piccolo as being kind of shrill, but her tone is really beautiful. It's not a bright, shrill tone. It's a darker tone of which I dig,
Yeah, and so at what point did you guys realize that you're more than just making music together, but that you saw a future together yourselves, and how did that impact your music that you were making?
Oh, that's nice. Yeah, we are so happy to have found each other, and we feel really grateful for the way that we can live our lives, which is, for me, it's the first time I think I've really integrated all the different parts of me is in this music life and this love life with Jim. And so, it was one of those things where we were colleagues, then we were friends, and then, which is, I think, the best way to fall in love is to fall in love with a friend. And because we remain best friends. So it was just a real slow, gradual sort of capturing of our hearts. And I think at certain points we thought, this doesn't make sense. You can't work together and live together and, you know, and all of this, but guess what? You can. You can, and you do. And so we've been living together now for about 6.5 years, 6 years, maybe 6 years. And we really do everything together. And we just pal around and are super compatible and can play music whenever we feel like it. And I think that it really, like our songwriting, which we do a lot of co-writing together, I think it helps to be in at least a friendship, a good friendship with somebody that you're writing with. I don't have that much experience in it, but writing with Jim, like co-writing with somebody, requires a lot of the same skills that it takes to have, I think, to have a good relationship, which are the, you have to be very open. You have to be a good listener, and you have to have the courage to say what you want and what you hear, and be willing to give space to your partner to hear what they want, what they like or don't like. And so I think that our relationship has been, it both benefits our songwriting, and our songwriting and music practice also has us do good practices that are good for a relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, I mean, we can talk for a minute about Western Sun. The album's, coming out at the end of the week, and so tell me about how you going into this album differed, you know, for you guys from what you had done previously. What was your process?
Well, the pandemic and shelter at home mandates happened just around the time that we had planned to start an album release campaign. And we are fortunate to know some people who are knowledgeable and who we've worked with before. Jackie Marushka in Nashville, and Brad Hunt on radio, Carrie Esther on radio. Jackie introduced us to Ivy PR, Maria Ivy, and Sarah Bennett. So and social media, Miles High Production. I mean, we just sort of have a wonderful group of people that we get to work with. And so we just checked in with everybody to say, what do you think? I mean, should we just go for it? Or, you know, is it not going to be as good? Or what do you think? And of course, nobody knows, and nobody knew at the time this was going to be extended and extended. And so, but I think part of what happens when you finish an album is that you've been writing and playing and living with the music already for at least a year.
Yeah.
Right? So by the time you've done the album and then it's ready and then you've planned a release, you kind of got a lot of stuff, new stuff you feel like doing. So we love it, right? Yeah. Just as much. We still love it. We still play it and love it. But it kind of felt like there's all this new energy building up. And so we said, you know, let's do it. Let's just see what happens. This will be a pandemic release, and we'll learn something from it, and we'll never forget it. And that is certainly true. We've canceled 4 tours, 2 to Canada and 2 to Europe. And we're very sad about that. Really sad, really disappointed that we weren't able to do that. We hope we can do it again in the future, but who knows when or how. So it's meant the whole live portion of the album has really been missing. But what we've slowly realized is that live stream is an alternative. It's not the same because, of course, you know, when you're in a room with people, there's just nothing like it. The energy, the love, the connection, even just being in the same room with our band, there's truly an enormous, like this bubble of incredibly positive energy just around us and around the music. So it's not the same. However, it is a way to stay somewhat connected to people. And so you saw our first live stream yesterday. So we started a weekly live stream. Yesterday was the pilot. That was really for family and friends. And we think it went okay. There were some glitches, but we'll probably come back and do it again next week. We're also doing a Father's Day Bluegrass Festival MC and a few songs this Saturday. That's at 6 o'clock Pacific time at turnyourradio.online. That's for 4 consecutive Saturdays through the second weekend of June. So, you know, we found some ways to kind of stay engaged, and our future is completely and utterly uncertain, like everybody else's, though we have the blessing of shelter and food and health, and that is not to be taken for granted. So we have that luxury of having the uncertainty, but having the essentials taken care of. So, you know, we'll just see what happens.
Absolutely. And you have music. Music helps push through so much of the hard times, right? So.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'll tell you what I think has been an interesting dilemma for us is that there's a lot of pressure to be upbeat and cheerful. And in a way, musicians right now are getting a lot of pressure to be entertainers. And some people love that and jumped right in. But I personally I still have mixed feelings about it, because I feel very connected to some of the suffering and pain that's happening now. And it's on my mind, and I'm worrying about it, and you know, we're doing what we can to help others. But I also feel that people need catharsis right now. And I think music is incredibly helpful for creating a bond around a shared experience, and around life experiences and death experiences, and the sadness that, you know, many people are, you know, feeling right now. So I feel like music is a way to also share those feelings, feel that human bond, and then try to heal it. And it's very interesting, because there's just a lot of pressure to like be upbeat, be cheerful. And I mean, we're super positive people, but there is no denying this is a really disturbing time. And, you know, there are people who are really, truly suffering. So I don't know, you know, we're just trying to kind of feel our way through all of that.
Yeah, you got to find that middle ground for sure. And, you know,
Yeah.
taking care of yourself, really taking care of yourself, and, you know, and looking out and helping others where you can, right? That's
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that's a oh gosh, my feeling about music and that relative to that is that it's a healing form of the arts, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think when people see that, yeah, they, you know, you've written a song that people relate to, or you sing a song that people relate to, it's knowing that they look at it and they go, wow, I can relate to that. You know, that, so it makes them feel like they're a part, they're not suffering alone. That's what it is.
Yeah.
They're not suffering alone. And I think that that's critical for the musicians who are, like you're saying, you know,
Mm-hmm.
I think the musicians they know it's their responsibility, right, to contribute to their community with music and however they do it. I mean, you can look at it as though you could say, well, a lot of singers are self-indulgent or something like that, but kind of maybe not, because if you're writing about an experience, if other people have that experience and people can connect to your experience and say, yes, that's the way I feel. You should listen to that song because that's the way I feel. And then what you're doing is helping people, you know, move through the process. Now, I think that a lot of country music, folk music, bluegrass music, rap music, a lot of the music that just comes out of the new, what I would call new music, really. I mean, we're not talking about classical music that's been around for a long time. Talk about the new forms of music. What happens is people are expressing themselves in their music of the current time. And so whatever the topic is, whatever those musicians are writing about, those are the topics that people can connect with. And I think that, you know, every culture has a time period in which the artists say something that has to do with the oppression, or it has to do with illness, or it has to do with tragedy, and people can relate to that stuff. There's heartbreak. There's interesting things, you know, we, on this new record we wrote, there's a song on there that's it's called the Fire, and it's based on a book that Hillary or Nell had read, and
Hillary Nell
had read, and so Nell is her middle name.
Okay.
And so Nell had read this book, and we were writing these songs with a buddy of ours, Chris Wadsworth. Chris had come up with this great melody, and Chris had been looking at the migration west. So there's the topic, right? People, if you're out west, a lot of people go, well, I came out west. Maybe their families came out during the settlement, during the gold rush, during the whatever time. In this particular case, it's about, you know, there's a migration and there's a story, and so the story is relative to this prior to kind of these fires that happened, that
California fires.
The California fires.
Campfire.
So Nell had already written this song. Chris had come up with this melody, and we had worked it out and into this tune. And it's interesting how it relates to the tragedies that happened in California and all these fires, you know. So that's part of when people listen to the new record. When they listen to Western Sun, they'll go like, "Oh, what was that? You know, what fire was that relative to?" And you know, I know people who lost their homes and all these things up in Santa Rosa, and so you look at that, and Nell says, well, it was actually written before that, but isn't it interesting how it, you know, it's relative time, you know? Yes.
Yeah, no, for sure. No, and I mean, you can relate to that stuff. I mean, even here, like the fires happened like behind my house. Like, you know, I didn't know if my house was going to be standing.
Yes.
You know,
yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, the whole region, Napa, gosh, it went all the way from, you know, Lake County straight through Napa County, Sonoma County, Marin County. I mean, it came all the way up through, you know, didn't hit Marin as bad. I mean, not up here, but Mendocino, and, you know, all these fires is just it's really incredible. So this is the things that we're talking about, and these times and how difficult they are. And like Nell is saying, you know, it affects you. You think about that, and you think, the first thing I thought about, one of the first things I thought about in this particular epidemic, I was thinking about Jimmy Rogers, and he had died from tuberculosis, and that one of my aunts died from tuberculosis. And so, and she's buried up in Colfax. And so in any case, I thought about that, and I thought about the TB Blues that was sung by Jimmy Rogers, and Merle Haggard always sang that song. And you have to think about these pandemics. They're not new. They're new to us because we've lived in an era of penicillin and inoculation. Well, prior to that, there wasn't anything, you know? And so we've been in a pretty, you know, measles, tuberculosis, you know, malaria, all these Spanish, there's all these things that now you can get. They've done a good job in eradicating this stuff in America. You know, we've been really fortunate. But there's a lot of things that are to come that we just don't know about. And this is one of them that we're not really prepared for, right? Yeah. So there's a lot of songs out there about this kind of stuff, and people can totally relate to it. You know, they can relate when you sing about this stuff, you know,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And
Awesome.
so I think that's a good segue into, you guys are going to be able to play us out with a song.
Oh,
Oh,
wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
We'd love to.
Okay.
Are you going to get that? Oh, Sequoia Gold. How about
Yeah,
that,
let's
babe?
do that. Yeah, let's do that.
Speaking of collaborating with our friend Chris on songwriting, this is one that the three of us wrote together. Although just say up front, Chris did most of the writing on this. He had done a lot of research about the early, early immigrants out to California for the gold rush, and those who didn't make it, and those who did, and those who turned to the sequoias to feed this enormous hunger in San Francisco for that fine wood, and how San Francisco grew in, I think it was 1 year, maybe 2 years, from a little tiny place of 500 residents to 25,000.
Yeah.
So they were this vast, they just had this vast hunger for wood. So people, of course, turned to felling the redwoods and the sequoias. This is called Sequoia Gold. And a lot of the terminology is super authentic that Chris found in his research. So I love the lines in this story. And Jim and I helped a little bit with some phrasing and verses at the end. And then we worked together to put it to music. But again, Chris Wadsworth's melody is the basis for the melody of the song. Jim, can you hear him out there tuning?
I'm trying to. Let's see for a tune. I just picked up the banjo. I'm not sure. It's, let me just see. Let's see if we're just tuned together. Yeah, it's good.
Ready? Can you
That's
hear
great.
okay?
Yeah, sounds good.
Oh, excuse me.
But it sounds good. It must not be us.
It's the birds chirping, trying to give him the melody.
Very funny. But this is on the new album, Western Sun, which is out May 29th. And this is one of our personal favorites.
Yeah. This is a fun interview, by the way. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Sorry.
This has been great.
I hope we didn't get too talkative.
I know. Can you tell we like to talk?
Oh,
we haven't talked to anybody in ages.
It's good. No, you're good. I'm happy to talk. I got a hard stop at top of the hour, but I'm good.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Here we go. I got blood on my hands, dead on my feet, standing on the banks of Casper Creek. Took 3 days, but I brought her down, good as gold when she hit the ground. She's 10 feet wide at the base at least, plucked and filled her piece by piece. Skid row laid and the oxen led, yard 'em all out to the riverbed. All the way across the immigrant trail, the mother gold, she cast her spell. 6 long months toward the setting sun, stumbled in, all but done. Worked my claim till I came up dry, the mother gold, she passed me by these mighty stands of timber old, my only chance of getting home. Winter's here, the rains have come, Casper Creek is gonna run, cut off all and clear this hill, let 'em Saws keep turning night and day. Homes for the Barons of Frisco Bay. You're gonna die here so untold. Make my casket of Sequoia Gold. I got blood on my hands, still on my feet.
Beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this interview. It's been really delightful to talk to you.
Yeah.
It's great to talk to you guys as well. Thank you for taking the time. I enjoyed the new album and look forward to it being released. I know it's not what you guys were expecting in terms of the release process and everything. You should have been going to England, soon.
You saw that, huh?
Well, hey,
Ireland.
we're good broadcasting to Napa.
Yeah.
Better than that.
Really.
Hard to complain, right? You on the water, me on the air.
Thanks so much, Steve. We really appreciate your taking the time to interview us here today.
Yeah, be well, stay safe. Thanks for helping us get the word out with the music.
Sure. And if you want, I can give you my email address or phone number if you do the Kayak Concert. I mean, that would be fun to get the
Love
kids.
to. Yes, would you? That'd be great.
Yeah. So concertpipeline@yahoo.com.
Concertpipeline@yahoo.com.
Yeah.
Okay, great. How old is your son?
My son is 6 and my daughter's about to turn 10. So.
Oh, how awesome. Yeah, bring them both.
My pushing kayaking now, but she has her own kayak, so we can make it work. So.
Right on. Right on.
Sounds good. Well, you guys have a great rest of your day and stay safe, and hopefully you'll be here soon. Okay.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.